Welcome to Almost Here, Round the Corner Future Technology podcasts with Richard Jacobs. Future technologies poised to transform our lives for better or worse are the focus of this podcast. Almost here means these technologies are now here and starting to be used, or just around the corner, from Bitcoin to artificial intelligence, 3D printing, blockchain, virtual reality, and more.
Hello and welcome to Future Tech Podcast. I'm your host, Juliette Lamar, and joining us today is James Giancotti. He is the CEO at Oddup, which is a very interesting company. I'm excited to share it with all of you. Welcome, James.
Thank you for having me.
Absolutely, James. So why don't you give our listeners a little insight into Oddup?
Sure. Well, look, the easiest way I usually do the small and the long end. So Oddup, we rate startups, we rate ICOs, and we rate cryptocurrencies. So that's the short response of what we do. The longer response is we help investors with a fair bit of research, analyst work, and analytics around everything in the startup and crypto space. We've been going on for about 4 years, and we're originally based in Hong Kong, and we've branched out to all parts of the world.
Fantastic. So you're really on top of things, and you are seeing this whole industry ebb and flow. You have so much insight and data. What do you not follow? Do you try to follow all cryptocurrencies and all ICOs? How do you even sort through that amount of data?
Well, maybe I'll give it a bit of history from what we've seen as a company for the past 3-4 years, and sort of where we see things moving. So Oddup was always around the startup space. We started as always startups primarily in Asia, but then of course globally. But one of the things we noticed around August last year was that a lot of startup investors, so we call them sort of angels everywhere in the world, they were really pulling away from the startup investors, and purely because crypto and ICOs were returning at a much faster rate. And one of the things we're seeing with our own product and ultimately also the industry is that the VC world has changed dramatically, particularly in the angel space, where angels would typically invest in 8 to 10 companies a year, are looking at 8 to 20 ICOs. And what our customers are telling us is a very simple thing, is that if they invest in, let's say, 20 companies from the YC or 500 batch, and they've got a 5 to 10 year turnaround and only 1 or 2 or 3 superstars, that is their capital locked up. Whereas all of a sudden now, it's made investment easier, where in 3 to 6 months, they've got their return on investment and then can see whatever happens going forward. So really, in fact, they're on top of the investment game and seeing returns. They may not be 10, 20, 30, 40 multiples, but in most instances, they're getting their money back 2 or 3x. So that is a major change that we've seen in our customer base. And also from the B2B space, we've seen incredible interest from corporates and particularly into space. Wow.
So it's a lot of changes happening quickly. What are some of the main trends, I guess, that you're seeing with all of this?
Maybe I'll take in two sort of ways, the standard VC / angel and then the corporates / iBank. So we tend to deal with two major customers, the VCs and also the investment banks. And the investment banks typically originally were the private banking parts of the banks. The customers were looking at the Series C, Ds, where there's hundreds of $1 million investment. And also for the angels, sort of the scenario I just gave. What we've seen as the major trend is that a lot of angel / smaller VCs are becoming hedge funds. So effectively, they're looking as the ICO / crypto space as a 6 to 12 month process with each company they're investing, rather than a 10-year process. For the major institutions, this is an opportunity that they haven't seen since literally 2008, where you had people had a prop desk where companies like Goldman or JP Morgan would invest their own money into stocks, into bonds, or what have you, and make money from that. And of course, when there's changes have happened because of regulatory rules in the US, that sort of stopped a lot of those things on the track. All of a sudden, cryptocurrencies, particularly in the Mage 10, have been really an avenue for people to build their own prop desks. Now, I know a lot of people aren't talking about that. People have mentioned some names out there, but a lot of the investment banks that we're talking to have already started it, doing it in stealth mode, seeing how it's going, and that's had a huge trend in 2009.
Wow, it's so much to keep up with, but also such an exciting time to really be in this industry and seeing everything that's happening right before our eyes. How did you get started with all of this?
Well, I always laugh when I think about how I got into this space versus, where I am at this space at this point in time. Now, I've always been in the corporate space for most of my life, worked in my last sort of full-time job was with Goldman Sachs in the research department. I became an angel investor, invested in a couple of great companies, had some exits, and as part of being a sort of minor VC, a small VC, I put together research reports around the companies that I was going to invest in. And most of the LPs said, this is actually really good. Can we, buy this? And that's how Oddup was born. And so I sort of got into that space from leaving the corporate job, going into a startup space, and then Oddup becoming a product of my work as a VC. Now, as I look at where I'm sort of going, I see it as, never leaving the startup space / the world. And I include crypto and ICO in that startup space because we're all startups and sort of never leaving. I sort of never want to go back to look at life.
And so jumping back into Oddup, let's talk a little about the cryptocurrency rating system and how people can utilize that.
Sure. So there's two major things that we're doing with Oddup. One of the things we've been famous for is to give startup rating, VC rating, ecosystem ratings, and so forth, such as location. We've gone into crypto because that's what our customers are asking for us. But what they're asking for us is, rather than a YouTube celebrity or someone sort of saying this is what they think, to give some analysis around crypto and also ICO. Particularly in the ICO space, where there's so many projects and a lot of the projects have been failing. Now, what we look at when we look at the ICO space is give every ICO a rating, buy, hold, buy, or not buy, or buy, hold, sell is our typical analysis that we use. And where we see a 1 month, 6 month, and 12-month price target. And what that means is, if you put in $100,000 today, how much return will you get in 1 month, 6 months, 12 months, based on our algorithms, based on our analyst reports. And so a lot of the ICOs have either invest or not invest, a bit of advice associated with that. With the cryptocurrencies, it's a bit more transparent because the data's there, it's available, everyone can see it, everyone can see the movement. And so you'll see everything from Bitcoin to XRP to EOS to Bitcoin Cash, you name it. And typically the top 30 to 40 names out there have a buy, hold, or sell associated with that. Now, crypto has made it much easier for us to track a lot of the analysis that we used to find very hard to find for startups, where you do not have price change of prices, you don't have summary financials, and all the things that you would typically get for a public company. So for a lot of the crypto ratings, it's looking at trends, it's looking at analysis around where the market is moving, where we look at price and time analysis and so forth. For ICOs, we take a much more old school approach. Now, most of the ICOs, if not all of them, are based around a startup. And we rate startups. And so when you think of a more simplistic version is, if we were looking at the ICO as a startup, would they survive? Would we put a buy, hold, sell around it? We'll look at the same thing with the ICO. It's just that the ICO's got a lot more information and much more faster, more robust around that.
Absolutely. And what is really setting Oddup apart from other companies who are trying to achieve a similar goal?
I would say partnerships. So one of the things I've sold this very much in a lot of the media that I do, is that Oddup always wanted to be sort of like a Coca-Cola. When you think of Coca-Cola, you can always buy it at 7-Eleven, you can buy it at McDonald's, you can buy it at the supermarket. It's something that plays well with everyone. So one of the things that Oddup is an enabler to other companies to achieve their requirements. So one of the things that we're really sort of growing with is our partnerships. We've got partnerships both with Bloomberg and Thomson Reuters, Times of India, you name it. We're sort of building our own presence and working as an enabler for a lot of these companies, rather than us sort of doing it by ourselves. And that sort of helped us grow to where we are currently. I'm a big believer that we're the way for us to succeed is to work with a lot of other similar-minded companies, particularly in the B2B. And
that's building a community. That's really taking it back into the community aspect of all of these things that are occurring in this space. Is you want to talk to, and you want to work with people that you trust and move forward together in such a way.
Yeah, look, I would agree with that statement. A lot of this community, particularly in the crypto space, it's a very new community, and a lot of people are getting into this space where that they weren't in this space 12 months ago. And having built a community around the startup, and also working with communities of startups such as the 500 Startup World or so forth, that these things take time. And the cryptocurrency community is, it's been around in its infancy stage for many years, but now all of a sudden it's going mainstream. The difference is now, I guess, everything's accelerated much faster in the cryptocurrency community. But it's also that what we want to do as Oddup, particularly in this community, is to sort of make it not so much mainstream, to make it more Wall Street. And that's one of the things we've prided ourselves on. One of the things that the community is desperate to see is backing institution sort of verification. Everyone's thinking that's going to happen. Oddup's making that happen by working with those institutional players to make them aware of what the community is about, what these assets can do, and ultimately how they can see value in it. One of the things that we sort of mention to a lot of people in this space who are so technically focused or so entrenched in the community is that it's sort of like me speaking about startups with my mum. She sort of knows there's an Uber and an Airbnb out there, but really doesn't understand what's really going in the space. And that's typically how we see us talking to the institutional players. There's a lot of education needed, but over time, particularly as a general community, we're going to educate. And when people are talking about assets being worth 20, 30 times the price they are, it's because people were educated, and we all work to see that actively happen.
Education and research are, to me, the biggest building blocks when it comes to a new space, a new idea, because with the unknown, you can't make informed decisions. You have to take the time to really research what is going on, which is why this service is imperative.
Yeah, we seem to think that as well. What's one thing we pride ourselves on. What we want to do is effectively build some transparency around it. One of the beautiful things about the blockchain is because it's transparent. But a lot of things in the cryptocurrency space at the moment are so siloed, they're not really transparent at all. And that's what's really holding back a lot of intents where, when there's an innuendo, there's a rumor, or one company such as Coinbase has announced something, things move so drastically, it doesn't give people security for long-term growth. And so that's something that we're trying to do, at least our part, and we're one of many people that do this, to help build that sense of trust within this community outside this community. But I agree, the more hands at it, the better it is.
Definitely. So tell us a little bit about the platform. How do people interact with it? Pricing or packages, or how do people get started?
Sure. Well, we're available at oddup.com, oddup.com, and we cover major things of the startup and crypto space. So we have multiple things such as ratings of startups, so details on the startup, details on the investors who invest in the startup, ecosystem. So one of the biggest clients we're now getting is a lot of government and sovereign funds who are interested in, that age-old question, what's the next Silicon Valley? We rate all the Silicon Valleys, everything from Beijing to Bangalore to Tel Aviv, you name it. So, and also industries. People also are hot on an industry. At the moment, blockchain, AI, and bike, scooter sharing apps are the hot things here in 2018, and people want to see information on that, and that's something that's on the platform. We've now introduced cryptocurrency and ICO ratings as well. People can easily access that all through a third party through our API. We start at $499 a month. That's with everything, every rating unit. A lot of our customers are businesses and integrate it within their own institutional platform as well. For anyone who's interested in the community space and the crypto space and wants to get into it, they can easily sign up, see our ratings, take some of our recommendations, and hopefully do really well out of that.
Oh, definitely. Where do you see, Oddup and this industry going in the coming months?
Oh, in the coming months is very short term, but if I look at the industry, the first question I always get asked is Bitcoin going to go up? The short answer is yes. And we make it no secret. We've actually got a 62% price target up positive and a buy on Bitcoin. We see the market really have taken its hit in the first 6 months. And the next 6 months, you'll start seeing many good stories in this space. A lot of the cowboys have decided to leave because they just got in at the wrong space. But over time, I see this community becoming, and the space becoming much more institutionalized, but more importantly, more apps that make it much easier to work with. One of the things that I see, particularly in the next 6 to 12 months, is making it easier for everyday person to use the product. Rather than have a ledger and or a tracer and have your coins separated, people want custody of their coins. A lot of that stuff and apps around the blockchain community are going to enhance much better, and that's a key thing for the industry to go forward. I remember the same thing when, and this is probably telling my age, when, in the mid 90s, I had to, dial up internet. Now it's as easy as just connecting to Wi-Fi, and kids in my team just don't understand what I went through. We are now heading towards how easy it is, how we get on the internet versus what it was 20 years ago. So I think the apps and the way the technologies use it, from a high picture, you're going to get people sort of wanting to be the Android, wanting to be the Apple, or people in Ethereum, people in EOS, people in Stellar, you name it. Everyone in those community, and we will look at Ripple being an exchange method of money. All these big names becoming much more household names, which is a key thing for us in the next 12 months. For Oddup, we just want to build a platform that services our customers the best possible way and integrate with people and as I said before, make us more institutional friendly so that more institutions get on board in what we believe is the Internet 3.0 without question.
Yeah, and you bring up a good point, about historically, anything that's new is going to be scary and it's going to present its own challenges. And we use email every day. It's not perfect. A lot of times emails don't work. A lot of times people are using them expecting something, but everyone's used to it. We have a certain level of expectation, and just getting it to be a household name is such a major step. Getting people's mind around, there's this other type of exchange and currency that I can use. Just the idea of getting in people's heads is such a huge step.
Look, I 100% agree with that. I just look at my mum and my dad who are in their 70s. They know of Bitcoin because that's the only one that sort of gets all the headlines these days. But they send me messages on WhatsApp. They're in Australia at this point in time, and I'm in the US. So, they're using technology in a way that if I looked at it 10 years ago, I would have never expected something like sending photos via WhatsApp being something that they do. Same thing's going to apply with the blockchain and blockchain apps. I think we're at the 90s when we look at these things. Ethereum could be Android of the future. XRP could be something much bigger than that, or EOS could be the new Apple. We don't know, but many of these names may not exist in 10 years' time. But there'll be other names that take their place and really build a solution that everyone can use. There's no such thing as cash anymore, and that's probably going to happen. The same thing happened when credit cards came around, and now it's part of daily life. So things change, and things change much faster.
Yes, they definitely change much faster. Once the ball's rolling, it gets more and more momentum. That is for sure. So what's some of the biggest? Yes, you're working in this space. You have access to so much information. What are some of the takeaways that you have from working in this space? What are some of your biggest lessons that you've learned?
I'm going to get into trouble for saying this, but I said this yesterday. I think at the moment the crypto community is a bit like reality TV stars, where a lot of them think they're bigger than they are. And it's very, very obvious to anyone outside the space that no one really knows what's going on. So no one's a superstar yet. And one of the things that's found is that particularly in the last 12 months, a lot of these people have made a name for themselves, made a lot of money, and so a lot of the lessons of investing in companies or investing in ICOs have just thrown out the door, and people have lost a lot of money because of it. They haven't sort of, particularly in the investment space, they haven't sort of been following on Andreessen or Sequoia model where, there's been a lot of years of practice. Luckily, a lot of people have learnt the lesson the hard way, and that's changing in a good way. So I think last year there was just a lot of people who made a lot of money and didn't really know what they were doing. Whereas this year, I'm finding that a lot of people are going, okay, let's hire really good people who know this space and let's build funds around this and really build products. Another thing that I've noticed that's very different in, I guess, the US, particularly in the Valley versus Asia where our other office is Asia sees this very much as a trade. This is very much equities, where in the US, everyone's looking at it more as building product. I come from the product way, where I think long-term you build a bigger company over time by, great guidance, great mentors, investors who can help build the next Ubers, the next Limes of the world, you name it. Whereas in Asia, it's very much about, okay, what's the price of Bitcoin? What's the price of XRP? What's the price of Ethereum? And that is a major difference. One of the things I do like, though, is that it is a global way of seeing things rather than a very Silicon Valley focus. So this is going to be an interesting way in the future of how the startup ICO/crypto space is going to evolve. So I think that's the last 12 months. In the future, it's pretty much going to be like it was with the startup space in the last 10, 15 years in the Valley. It's going to mature and get much more. It's much more about the product rather than the price.
Oh, that's a wonderful takeaway for sure. So people love it. They want to get involved. They want to just start using your platform. What is the best way for them to connect and to learn more?
Look, Oddup.com is the best way to connect to us. We're more than happy to, get our account management team or our support customer service team to happily run through it with you. Even as a new subscriber or someone who's just interested in the space, more than happy to go through some of the stuff that we've done, some of the success we've had by rating companies, and also sort of to learn about the space as well. A lot of people, particularly in the crypto space, are dipping their toes in the water at the moment, and so we feel that we're a great platform for them to see things over the next 6 to 12 months, how prices change, and then see what we've said, see that it's right, and then ultimately go forward and go, okay, I'm going to invest in this space or be part of this space as a startup.
That is fantastic. Well, James, thank you so much for joining us and giving us such a wonderful look inside of this industry and sharing this wonderful service with us.
Thank you so much for having me.
That is James Giancotti. He is the CEO at Oddup. Thank you all so much for tuning in. This has been Juliette Lamar with Future Tech Podcast.
You have been listening to Almost Here, Around the Corner Future Technology Podcast with Richard Jacobs. Subscribe to this podcast, post a review to discover more future technologies that are poised to transform our lives for better or worse, such as Bitcoin, artificial intelligence, 3D printing, blockchain, virtual reality, and more.